got a few minutes.
No, you can drink coffee during the Midrash. So we're going to be Midrashing on Torah portion, double Torah portion, Nitzavim-Vayelekh today. Scriptures we read earlier on the screen. Before we do that, though, let's acknowledge we have eaten and are satisfied. The scripture says, "Who will eat and be satisfied, you will bless Adonai your God for the good land He has given us." Let's do that. We have eaten and we're satisfied. We thank you for the land. It's in Yeshua's name. Amen. All right. So our Torah portion kind of begins with this passage, if you will, and it's a passage that we read, and see from the second word in. If you're looking at the Hebrew text, where it says Atem Nitzavim, that means that translates to standing, and that's why it's in the plural sense. All y'all are standing, and that's the name of the first of the two portions, two readings, and translates something like this: Today you're standing, all of you, before Adonai your God, your heads, your tribes, your leaders, and your officers, all the men of Israel. So let's go on then to our quiz, or our question anyway, as in how many mitzvot of the 613 mitzvot are included in this week's portion. Is it 0, 2, 3, or 7? It is one of those four answers.
7?
So 7 is one of them. Who wants to guess 7? Do you want to raise your hand for 7? One vote. Who votes for 3? There's 3 votes for 3. Who votes for 2? 2 votes for 2 is perfect. And who votes for 0?
Do a 0.
They got to be at 0 votes for 0. Okay, 1 vote for 0. Well, so those who voted, first of all, for number 7 are out.
Yeah, there was like something.
Sorry.
There might actually be 0.
Now it is the zeros are out. So the ones who are in, though, are number 2. Good job.
Oh, see, there was like very little.
Correct. I forgot to ask who was afraid to vote. Sorry about that. So here are the 2 mitzvot. To assemble every 7th year to hear the Torah read. And it appears that it's every 7th year that you're to read the entire Torah during Sukkot. What is typically done? I mean, in you guys' experience, have you normally read the entire Torah during Sukkot, or just Devarim, or what?
I've always thought it was the entire list.
Well, it appears that to read the entire Torah is every 7th year. The problem might be, well, when is the 7th year in that sense? So that's why some have done
Well,
it.
it's specifically referring to the Shemitah year.
Right, but see, that's
When
when-
this.
but when is that?
Well,
When is the Shemitah year?
to be safe, you can just read it every year. And you for sure did at some point.
So then, for this coming Sukkot, you want to read the entire Torah?
Go.
Let's go. First, you have to put camouflage paint on.
So,
Well, because you got to get ready to go in the wilderness. You got to be able to be ready. Now, the second mitzvah of this is, it's a little bit controversial in the sense of, here's what the mitzvah listed is. It says to write a copy of the Torah. And this is FFOZ's application, applies to Jewish men in every time and place. So here's what the text says. The text reads, "So now write this song for yourselves and teach it to the children of Israel. Place it in their mouth so that this song will be for me a witness against the children of Israel." So you can see that from the text of the Torah itself, it's not really a command to write the Torah or a copy of the Torah. Comment from FFZ: the sages derive from this verse that every Jewish man is commanded to write a Torah scroll, a commandment that can be fulfilled by writing a single letter of a complete scroll.
Yeah, it seems to defeat the purpose if you write a single letter.
Well, if your letter was from this particular Torah portion where it says to write down, or next portion, Hazina, where the song is, then that would perhaps apply.
Yeah, considering it kept talking about the song and the very next portion is the song.
Yeah.
That would make a whole lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one question I have is, why does it only apply to Jewish men in every different place if it says children of Israel, which usually implies both men and women?
It can. B'nai can mean all, but could also be literally just sons of. Like you say, the sons of Israel, the same word as children of Israel. And typically, when it's commands like this, it would not necessarily. It's not saying that women couldn't do it, but they would have other responsibilities, not necessarily writing Torah scrolls.
And in this specific case, if you go back to the beginning of it, it said, "And all of your men are standing here before me." And it was just the men.
That doesn't mean that women couldn't write the song.
They're just not required to.
Yeah, sort of. It's the same sort of way as some mitzvot are typically applied only to men
So
anyway.
typically it would be to the household. Because to the household, you write it for the household.
Yeah.
The man would write it, it
Because
would
the
be
man
for
is
the
the
whole
head of the house.
household.
Right, and
Once
this
they
is
write it, they're also supposed to place it in their mouth, so it'll be a witness against the children of Israel. So everybody hears it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's not just writing it, but it's also speaking it.
And the other place where it says, talk about that every day, all day long to your children, so when you're getting out of bed,
Yeah.
before you retire.
Mhm. With we sweep it. Excuse me, we recite that section of the Torah every week as part of the Haftarah. So which is easier, what the Torah says or what is derived from it? What the Torah says to write this song for yourselves, versus what the sages say is that you have to write the entire copy of the Torah. Which is easier?
Except then they go on to say that they only have to write a single character of it.
Well, it's not saying that they only have to write a single character. They're saying you have to write a copy of the Torah, but writing a single character of it fulfills the mitzvah. The commandment is still to write a copy of the Torah.
What's the least we can do to get away with it?
Yeah, that's kind of a way to look at it. I think that the mitzvah is to write the song itself, Torah portion ha'azine, which is if you look at it in the sense of what the command is, you could actually fulfill the command that the rabbis are saying by writing just what the Torah says. Because if the rabbis are saying you can fulfill the mitzvah by simply writing a single letter of the Torah, then, well,
They got tired of writing it.
I would say that I know, talking to JD, how he has studied that and written some parts of Torah. It seems to me that it would not be a very good looking Torah scroll if you had a bunch of people writing their letters on it. I mean, we're not all very good penmanship, so to speak, in that sense. Anyway, so continuing on from that, our Torah begins kind of with this, the all y'all part of this is, when you look at it, it's 10 through 12 or 9 through 11, the in covenant part is not just for the men, it's literally everybody that's there, along with your little ones, your wives, your foreigners who are with you in the camp, the one who chops your wood to the one who draws water. So it's the plural you that's here, the y'all sense that you are here today. And as we read it, does it apply to those who are just in the wilderness at that time?
No, it says those who are not here too.
We keep reading. It says, I'm making it both with him who is standing here with us today before Adonai, our God, also with him who is not here with us today.
And that's everybody, past, present, future.
Yeah. So I think that includes everybody in this room where this applies to, in that it's the covenant is being made with those who take hold of it in order to walk it out, to do it. So kind of stealing this line from, was it Olive Garden? If you're here, your family. So men, your children, your wife, your gerim, your sojourners in the camp are equally in covenant and established as a people for Yah. And here's how part of that is understood by Rashi. He writes, where it says that you may enter into the covenant, that you may pass through the covenant. This is just the method of those who made covenants. They would set up a demarcation on one side and a demarcation on the other. And respective parties of the covenant pass through between these partitions. As the verse says, when they cut the calf in two and passed between its parts. Jeremiah 34, also back, of course, on the verse sheet. He says, a bar to pass over or to pass through is part of this basic creating the covenant, which is, of course, the root word of Ivri, translated as Hebrew. Same word used in Genesis 15:7. So when you're making a covenant, you're passing over or passing through it. Hebrew word abar, root word for Ivri.
So they called themselves the people of the covenant, essentially.
Literally, people who passed over, but to pass over for the purpose of establishing a covenant, so to speak. So certainly, it certainly wouldn't be wrong to say they consider themselves a people of the covenant. That's in our text. That's what they're taking hold of to do that. Yes, I agree. Thank you.
Isn't that what British means?
It's a way of expressing that covenant man, but
May not be a connection, but
sort of the same way that butterfly has got a connection with dairy products.
I thought it was. That's how we got butter, with milk butterflies.
Yeah, I suppose you might be right.
They grow small hands.
Wonder if it's the same people who milk almonds.
Soybeans. Coconut, you can see that, right? Coconut milk is a real thing.
That's a little bigger. Probably milk it easier.
What's that?
Coconut's bigger, you can milk it easier than almond.
I think typically you cut open the coconut. You don't actually milk it in that sense.
Ooh.
No. Coconut doesn't survive. So I get the idea of not with you alone, but those stand here who's with us and those who are not with us. I think that's important to see as part of. I guess you can call ourselves a peculiar people in the sense that it's unique or an individual, because not everybody in the world has taken part in this covenant, right? those who are with those who stand with Moshe today at that time, and those who are standing with Moshe today at this time.
Those who will join themselves to the covenant in the future.
But as Ben said earlier, yeah, it's a past, present, and future sort of standing. But when you think about it, it's not unusual to think of that because we've all went through a Passover Seder, and part of the Passover Seder is you're making a declaration, of what you tell your children what God did for me,
As if you were
as if you were there at the time.
It seems to also tie very closely to that verse that says he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. If he's the same and the covenant's with him,
Mhm.
it's yesterday, today, and forever.
Right.
People that were yesterday, the people that are today, and the people that are
In the future.
in the future.
So there are a couple of Targumim that comment on this. Here's what Targum Jonathan says. And not only with you only do I ratify this covenant and attest this adjuration, but all the generations which have arisen from the days of old stand with us today before the Lord our God, and all the generations which are to arise unto the end of the world, all of them stand with us here this day. So it's essentially you're agreeing here with how Targum's interpretation of that. Here's what Targum, the Jerusalem Targum says. All the generations that have arisen from the days of old till now stand with thee today before the Lord our God, Lord your God, and all the generations which are to arise after stand here with us, also here with us today. So
Essentially the same.
it's very similar, but different Targumim, but they say that they agree with each other on this topic. Now, one of the things that is somewhat surprising how many people I think probably do this but don't realize they're doing it. And the idea of, well, if you look down at the, NIV says the same way here. When such a person hears the words of this oath, he invokes a blessing on himself and therefore thinks, I will be safe even though I persist and go my own way. And then there's a lot of discussion about what it means as the watered versus the dry. Well, most translations don't agree with each other on that. Watered versus dry is just, if you leave it that way, it's literal. Most translations, you put something in parentheses, commentary like the Complete Jewish Bible does, or Judaica Press Complete Tanakh does the same, where it says, well, they understand the watered to be unintentional sins and dry intentional sins. So adding drunkenness to thirst would be another way of saying, of translating this, although it's not really directly the translation either.
Like it's like being told you will be saved if you invoke Jesus' name, but if you're not serious about it, it means nothing.
Yeah, you're basically saying it's not going to, what all these things are, these curses are not going to apply to me because I'm going my own way. Essentially, I look at this as saying I'm sitting with a high hand in the sense of I'm going to do it my way, and I hear the curses, but I'm going to disobey them. Not disobey them. I'm going to ignore them because I'm going to go my own way, and that's why I think JPCT here translates it as adding unintentional sins to intentional sins. But even that concept is somewhat of a foreign concept in Western Christianity, I think. The idea of unintentional sin by that itself means if I didn't know it, how can I be held accountable for it?
In fact, they say that. Well, I'm not accountable.
I'm not sure if that really works well with what the Torah actually says. I will be safe. So the next slide has a couple of different translations of that, as I was talking about. Drunkenness of thirst is how King James and the scriptures read. Ruin of moist and dry alike, JPS. Disasters on watering wells, dry, we read. The American Standard, to destroy the waterland with the dry. We read the JPCT. So the JPCT, punishment of unintentional sins, in here, to that of the intentional sins, that follows the Aramaic Targum, that the interpretation is found in the Aramaic Targum. So the person hears the list of curses and says, it won't happen to me. I'll be safe. I can go my own way, do my own thing. The obedience stuff is no longer necessary because fill in the blank with some pious sounding reason.
Grace.
Grace. That's pretty much last night at prison. That was the first answer that was given for, and the filling in the blank with a pious sounding phrase. Yes.
Some people also say that we don't have to do some stuff because that was a ceremonial law instead of a moral law. He didn't come to do away with the law. He came to fulfill it.
They came to do away with it, so you don't have to do it, though, right?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of things you can't do.
Something else I've heard is that, yeah, technically we should, but we can't because it's impossible to do.
Well, this portion actually says it's not. That's
Yeah,
not the
no,
case.
that's-
This portion says you can do it.
It's not in heaven that you have to send someone after it.
Now, it is. This is exactly what this Torah says here. So it's really the Torah portion here does away or fights with a lot of theology that is anti-Torah. So I guess not only to kind of follow up on that. So basically, it's saying that he came to do away with. If he came to do away with ceremonial law, so to speak, unquote, it kind of says he came to do away with the temple service.
Yeah, which even Revelation says that we're going to be doing it again.
Well, what I get from that is him coming to do away with the temple service and alter the customs of Moses is exactly what the liars were saying in the Book of Acts. Remember those who were accusing Stephen were saying that exact same thing, but they were paid liars. So it's not something that you're on that side of. You don't reason, you don't understand that's the case when people make that argument, but that's exactly the same argument that the paid liars made in the Book of Acts. So there are a couple of different Torah anomalies in this text. In the text where it says Vashilachim, it has an enlarged lamed. It's 29, 28, or 27, depending on your translation. And this commentary is from Monty. My note at the bottom is that the worms ate the section of the text at Qumran. Those hungry worms. The lamed means a shepherd's staff or a herder's goad. The staff of Moses was used to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. The staff of Moses was raised up in the wilderness to symbolize how Messiah would raise up the cross. Would be raised up on the cross. It continues, the letter Lamed is made bold to remind us that the great shepherd will be the only one, or be the one who gathers us wherever we may be scattered. This passage of scripture explains how Israel was prophesied by Moses to one day be cast into all the nations, just as we have. The enlarged Lamed reminds us that the great shepherd will bring us back. Those are good. Whether that enlarged Lamed can be interpreted that way, it definitely, what he said is true about what will happen, in the sense that it is prophesied how Israel will be scattered to the nations in this Torah portion, and that if they're not scattered to the nations, Moshe becomes a false prophet, which he isn't. But also Israel would be brought back in to the nations, from the nations as well. Whether it's by a shepherd's staff analogy or either way, it still is true. Now, there are jots on top of every letter but one of the phrase lanu ulavanenu ad. And it's not actually over all the ad, as you can see. There's no jot over the top of the dalet of the word ad, which can sometimes be translated as witness, depending on it. But in this case, it's part of the until, as in until forever is the phrase. The jots have to do with Jacob's flock or family, is what Monty says. But when you look at this section, again, this did not survive at Qumran, so we don't know how old the jots are here. In Monty's view, the jots bring to mind family and future generations, reminding us each generation must look to the Torah for their instruction and to understand their part in Jacob's family. Being with Jacob's family being divided into two companies, two camps before crossing into the land. We see that we are divided, the house of Judah and the house of Israel. That night Jacob was afraid and in terror. He wrestled with God. He feared his brother Esau. It was called Jacob's trouble. Next day he was unified. His brother went away and received a blessing and a new name, Israel. Same will happen to us. We are in Jacob's trouble now. We're dealing with terror. We are divided. We await the blessing of God and his new day. Our names will be changed. We will live in the promised land. The sages say that what will happen to the father will happen to the descendants. Josh reminds us of the story of Jacob, Jacob's trouble, Jacob's flock, and the family coming together. We associate Jacob's trouble with the end time events, specifically the Great Tribulation, therefore is of profound interest to us. And that's Monty's view on that. The dots are over the word to say to, if you go back to it, it says to us and to our children. And it's the idea of this covenant and these the promises that are made to us and to our children. Also, we have required to us and to our children to walk in accordance with the instructions in order to have a time in the land. It specifically tells us that how well we obey, generally, we as in the general terms, obey what the instructions are, is how long we will spend in the land in peace and comfort. And that, as we see from history, was a long time, but not forever, so to speak, right? Now, the passage in that this comes in is the passage that says the secret matters belong to Yehovah our Elohim, but what is revealed belongs to us and to our children forever, to do all the words of this Torah. What is secret or hidden, and what is open, revealed. So one way to look at it might be the secret sins are known to Yah, hidden for the rest of the community. It could also have to do with the hidden circumcision that no one but Yah can see. And you look at Torah as being concealed and revealed, there's a lot of things that are that way. Prophecy as well. Revealed is often understood to mean that sins are being revealed that are open to observation and correction by the community, so to speak, a Matthew 18 sort of thing going on with that. But it doesn't necessarily have to mean that in terms of secret matters. The secret matters could be hidden in prophecy versus those things that are revealed. In other words, the revealed are how to walk them out, or really what the commands are. The 613 mitzvot from the Torah are not concealed, they're revealed. But a lot of prophetic things, secret matters in this context, may be things that are hidden and only known to Yah at this time. And there's a lot of prophecy that looks like it could be coming to the case, but it's not always easy to determine that. What's right and what's not. In this Torah portion, I do think, I may have said it other times too, but I really do think that this is one of my very favorite Torah portions, if not my favorite Torah portion, because of the unfulfilled prophecy we see in reading all the way from Devarim 30 verse 1 to 30 verse 6. And in this section is important because it does contain, again, a prophecy that is not necessarily all good for Israel, right? It prophecies that Israel would be scattered to the nations, but would return. And as we read this section, as we look through it, it also is, if you are driven out to the farthest parts under the heavens, has that happened? Israel was scattered to the nations, yes. So if Israel hadn't sinned and fallen away, then Moshe would have made a false prophecy about this being the case. But then he says, and your Elohim, your Elohim would bring you into the land which your fathers possessed. You shall possess it. And he shall do good to you, increase you more than your fathers. So the population of Israel is getting larger and larger. And Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim, would circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed, or your descendants, to love Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim, with all your heart, with all your being, so that you might live. So this turning back and of going back into the land is in partial fulfillment of this prophecy, among others, of course, in the prophets, not necessarily always in the Torah. But this is a bit of unfulfilled prophecy from the Torah that is yet to completely be fulfilled. We've seen some of this start to happen as Israel has gone back into the land, but certainly there are many of them whose hearts are not circumcised. And in a larger sense, this unfulfilled prophecy of circumcision of the heart going back into the land is about ending the exile. But you see verse 10 where it says, only if you obey the voice of Yud-Heh-Vav, your Elohim, to guard his commands and his laws, which are written in this book of the Torah, to turn back to Yud-Heh-Vav, your Elohim, with all your heart, with all your being, all your nefesh. And so, has that really happened yet? I'm going to say it's really, there's a movement. Israel has been in the land for more than 50 years now, right?
Like there's somewhere where it says when the return starts, that the house of the tents of Judah will be
first, yeah.
which I think that's what is happening.
Yeah.
Then later, all of Israel.
When I look at this, it seems to me this is a lot like a picture of, you look back, 60 years of history about the dry bones prophecy coming about. Israel right now reminds me of a partial skeleton without the ruach, without the flesh put on it. It's a skeleton that's being built, but Israel still has not really turned back to the Torah. I mean, it's still a very secular nation overall, but there's an undercurrent of religious belief and walking in Torah by Orthodox and by some of the conservatives there and sort of Messianics. So, we've seen the exile, but only part of the turning back. We have seen the partial return to the land, but not its fullness. It's we see it somewhat in what Paul wrote in Romans 2:29. But he is a Jew who is so in what is hidden, and circumcision is out of the heart, in the spirit, in the spirit and not the letter, whose praise is not from men but from Eloah. And when this is talking about the spirit and the letter, is as we've talked about before, it's the same thing as doing the least and the most. The least you can do is the letter. The most you can do is the spirit. In terms of your obedience, to want to do everything you can versus, okay, what do I have to do to be called obedient, and doing the minimum. So, sort of in an army sense, it's like saying, okay, how many push-ups do I have to do to pass the PT test? I'll do that many exactly. So again, we've only seen part of this turning back, and so in a sense, this is kind of my abridged version of the text, but it says, "Then Adonai your God will circumcise your hearts and the hearts of your children, so you will live. So you will love Adonai your God with all your heart and with all your being, and thus you will live. Then Adonai your God will give you more than enough in everything you set out to do. However, all this will happen only if you pay attention to what Adonai your God says. So you obey his mitzvot and hukot, which are written in this book of the Torah. If you turn to Adonai your God with all your heart and with all your being." Well, one of the things that commentary about this on this section is from Rambam, who says that if you don't believe, and I'll look at the next slide. It's Rambam had I think 13 foundations of biblical Judaism. He says the 12th foundation is a time of Mashiach. This means to believe and be certain that he will come. One who doubts this or who minimizes his greatness denies the Torah that testifies explicitly to the coming of Mashiach. In the account of Balaam, in the portion of Nitzavim, part of our portion, chapter 30, verses 30 through 35, continues, "When a man believes all of these foundations and his belief in them is clear, then he enters into the community of Israel. However, if a man does not accept even one of these foundations, then he has left the community and denied the fundamental. He is called a heretic." So what Rambam is saying is, if you don't believe that Israel will return, you can't be part of the community of Israel, which is pretty significant to make that statement. So those who, in Rambam's view, those who don't believe in the coming of Mashiach, or don't believe that Israel is going to return to the land and have their hearts circumcised, is not part of the community of Israel. So there are people, like Paul said, those who consider themselves to be Jews, but they're not really part of the community because they don't believe, if they following what Rambam said, they don't believe the Torah still has unfulfilled prophecy and it will be fulfilled. So what this is saying is this return is about the Messiah. This return is something that Messiah hastens and brings about. And we can start to see this looking at prophecy, such as Jeremiah 29, where he writes, "And you shall seek me and shall find me when you search for me in all your heart, and it shall be found to you, declares Yudevate. And I shall turn back your captivity and shall gather you from all the Gentiles or all the nations from which all places where I've driven you, declares Yudevate, and I shall bring you back to the place which I have exiled you." So Jeremiah 29 is also talking the same thing that Moshe was talking about in chapter 30. Ezekiel says the same thing, or a very similar thing, when he says, I'm going to bring back the captives of Yaakov, and shall have compassion on the house of Israel, and shall be jealous for my set-apart name, and they shall have borne their shame and their trespass they committed against me, when they dwell safely in their own land, with none to make them afraid. When I have brought them back from the peoples and gathered them out of the lands of their enemies, and I shall be set apart in them before the eyes of many nations. Continuing, "And they shall know that I am Yudhevah, your Elohim, who sent them into exile among the nations, and then gathered them back to their own land, and left none of them behind. And no longer do I hide my face from them, for I shall have poured out my Ruach on the house of Israel, declares the master. So this covenant, now you may have noticed, this covenant that's being made here is, if you look back to last week's portion, there's a very interesting thing that we see in chapter 28. It's part of last week's portion, but it's either 28:69 or 29:1, depending on the translation. It says, "These are the words of the covenant which Adonai ordered Moshe to make with the people of Israel in the land of Moab, in addition to the covenant which he made with them in Horeb." So the covenant in Horeb, also and perhaps better known as Sinai, is a different covenant that's being made what follows here. And so when someone says the Mosaic covenant, a good follow-up question might be, which one? Because there is the first covenant at Sinai, and then this second covenant, if you will, if the first covenant happened 40 years ago, this is the one that would be called new. This new covenant of Moshe is what follows here now. And so we look at, if you hold your place here and go to Jeremiah 31, you'll see that there's some interesting things that Jeremiah says about the covenant at Sinai. It's in Jeremiah 31, 30 to 34, or 30, or beginning at 31, depending on your translations. It says, "Here the days are coming," says Adonai, this is Jeremiah 30 or 31, "I'll make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. It will not be like the covenant made with their fathers on the day I took them by their hand and brought them out of the land of Egypt, because they, for their part, violated my covenant, even though I, for my part, was a husband to them. So this is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after those days. Says Adonai, I will put my Torah within them and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will any of them teach his fellow community member or his brother, know Adonai, for all will know me, from the least of them to the greatest, because I will forgive their wickedness and remember their sins no more." So based on Jeremiah 31, and looking back at our portion here in chapter 30, really 28 to 30, but particularly in chapter 30, you can ask, how is the covenant the covenant we're reading in this Torah portion not like the covenant at Horeb? Well, this covenant prophesies that Israel will rebel, be exiled, and return to the land. Return to Yah, return to the land. Outcasts will be gathered from the ends of the earth, that Yah will show compassion on them. He speaks of a hidden inward circumcision of the heart. When Israel returns to Yah and to the land, they will be prospered abundantly in children and livestock, and specifically mentions the Gerim as part of the establishment of his people, or those who have joined in. In this next section, it's kind of fine print on the screen, I'm afraid, but I would recommend at some point getting a copy of Nazarene Theology by James Trim, which this is a copy of some pages but he's comparing essentially the covenant with Moab, we just read today, with the new covenant of Jeremiah 31. And it's the comparison of the covenant of Moab compares favorably with the new covenant in Jeremiah 31. And that the covenant of Moab could well be known as the new covenant, because there's so many parallels with, certainly it's a different covenant than Horeb, just as the covenant in Jeremiah 31 talks about when I took your fathers out of the land of Egypt. And this comparison is the covenant of Moab to Jeremiah 31 and 32, through the hearts, writing the Torah on their heart, as it says in Jeremiah 31, which I think is a sharp or a distinct or is a parallel with circumcision of the heart, which is writing on your heart. It's not that writing a circumcision on your heart, it tells you how you walk, just as writing the Torah on your heart tells you how to walk it out. So there's a lot of detail in this that we don't really have time to go through today. But this establishment of being established in the land is in Devarim 29, as well as in Jeremiah 31 and 32, as is the idea of being scattered and then being scattered from there and then being returned from there, from being scattered back into the land. Those are that all comes from Devarim 29 and 30, as well as in Jeremiah 31 and 32. So at the very least, the topic is exactly the same with the covenant of Moab as the covenant, or the new covenant spoken of by Jeremiah the prophet. So that's not probably too surprising, since it's very true that this is unfulfilled prophecy, just like Jeremiah's prophecy is at this point also unfulfilled. So this is basically it's a quote from the book that I think is I basically put it here in its entirety. So now the covenant at Moab is the new covenant. The covenant at Sinai is an old covenant. Both the old covenant and the new covenant are in the Torah, but this new covenant is Torah-based, as the covenant itself states. You shall hearken to the voice of Yehovah your Elohim to keep his commandments and his statutes that are written in this book, the Torah. This new covenant is an everlasting covenant, according to Jeremiah 32, which gives us life. Jeremiah 30, verse 6, 15, and 19. An everlasting covenant which gives life must be, by implication, give everlasting life. So moving further to chapter 31, you'll see this similar phrases. Hazak v'amatz, you see that in Joshua. This is a slightly different way of saying it, but be strong and courageous is that same idea of being strong and courageous, essentially. Hazak v'amatz. This is the section we talked about earlier about reading when all Israel comes to appear before the Lord your God in the place you'll choose, to read this Torah aloud in the presence of all Israel. According to what the Talmud says, the king of Israel would read the Torah, read the book of Devarim to all Israel in order to fulfill this commandment. So that's probably why today we typically see just the book of Devarim read during Sukkot. But it also says before this verse every 7 years when Israel comes together. So as we were discussing, how many we don't know exactly when the Shemitah is, so it's not necessarily a bad idea to read the entire Torah. When you do that, it takes a distinct amount of reading, or basically a lot of reading in order to do that. So we can plan on
read it in shifts.
Yeah, well, not one. It's a group reading, so to speak. It's not just one person reading. It's more than one, obviously. Sometimes we've read it in one person reads 10 verses and has to go to the next, and if a portion ends, they just stop reading there, and the next person picks up. In other words, if they end the chapter, they stop there and don't get off on don't end so you don't get off. So you can't. So it breaks the continuity of 10 verses. Anyway, so that's what I have for our Midrash today. There's Dixie laying on the little couch there with her baby, being very cute and sleepy, enjoying the air conditioning and not being laid in the yard. What are your questions or comments?
So when God said he didn't come to do away with it, but what did he fulfill? Other than the things that
Well, you talk.
prophet said he would do.
Well, it's if you look in Matthew chapter 5, I think is where the section kind of is. It's 5, really verse 19, but there's other passages that lead up to it. It says, "Don't think that I've come to abolish the Torah or the prophets. I've come not to abolish, but to complete or to fulfill." Yesterday I tell you that until heaven and earth pass away, not so much as a yud or stroke will pass from the Torah, not until everything that must happen has happened. So whoever disobeys the least of these mitzvot and teaches others to do so will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever obeys them and so teaches will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness is far greater than that of the Torah teachers and Prushim, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. So what the fulfillment of Torah, fulfillment of prophecy is different than fulfillment of Torah. Fulfillment of Torah just essentially means to do it. You can see that, Torah has prophecy in it
So others
as
know
well.
how to do it.
Sorry?
You do the act so others know how to do it.
Yes, you can certainly be the guide for that. And basically, your halakha, how you walk out the Torah, is how
Because like how
your sins should
people
fall out.
usually translate it is, I did not come to abolish the law, but I came to abolish the law.
It's interpreted to mean that, yeah.
That's how people.
Well, many would say
that's how
that-
most people translate it.
Yeah, that's very true. And that what they would connect to this passage is when Yeshua says it is finished. And he's talking about his mission, and he's going to die there. What those who would want to say that the Torah has been abolished, they would say that when he said it was finished, he meant the Torah has been abolished. I mean, we know that. We know he didn't, but that's that teaching where it's connected. But it says, "Don't think I've come to abolish the Torah and the prophets. I've come not to abolish, but to complete." And so the prophecies about him have not yet been completed. Partly they have, but he also says that until heaven and earth pass away, not so much as a yud or stroke of the pen will pass away from the Torah. And so we have solid evidence that heaven and earth have not yet passed away, right? I mean,
And we're still
I
here.
don't know, we could just be dreaming.
well, there is the philosophy question of are we just brains and vats, or is part of or plugged into the matrix or something along those lines?
Yeah, is this all
We're in a bad sci-fi novel.
is this all a simulation? Yeah. On the other hand, we technically are brains and
Brains and vats.
Yeah.
well, not so much vats, but in meat suits.
Anyways.
So yeah, the
Okay.
fulfilling wasn't about the prophecy. The fulfilling was he did everything that the Torah said to do.
Yeah, he
didn't break a
duties.
single law.
well, right, because you can look and
Like,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm talking over you.
like
Sorry.
a security guard. They do it constantly. They're fulfilling their duties and guarding. Exactly.
Fulfilling their duty, and that's what he fulfilled was his duty
Talking the
according
ground,
to the
checking
Torah.
the cameras.
Here's what we are in fact ourselves commanded to fulfill the Torah. Here's what a section from Romans 13 says. Don't owe anyone anything except to love one another, for whoever loves his fellow human being has what? Fulfilled Torah. For the commandments, don't commit adultery, don't murder, don't steal, don't covet. And others are summed up in this one rule. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love does not do harm to neighbor, therefore love is the fullness of the Torah. So, in the same idea, loving your neighbor isn't something that you do once and you're done, right? You haven't fulfilled it by doing it the one time. You are to continue obeying what the Torah says. Doing what the Torah says is fulfilling what the Torah says. So I think another way to look at fulfillment of the Torah in Matthew 5 is to understand that if Yeshua had disobeyed the command of the Torah, he would not have fulfilled the Torah. He would have been a disobedient son and not a spotless lamb. In that sense.
Couldn't it be understood also that he could admit, I came to demonstrate the Torah?
Yeah, that's what
Or someone say that already?
Justine was basically saying that earlier.
Not in those words, but yeah.
Very similar thought of that. And demonstration, and that's what kind of look at, some of the controversy about what day did Yeshua do his Passover as a demonstration of how to do Passover. Certainly, it's very true that at that time in the past and even today, you can say that, disciples of certain rabbis do the Torah in the way that the rabbis say that particular rabbi says to do it. I mean, the way that Chabad does things is different than the way that other Orthodox groups do things based on their start is in a particular starting place. They're different than the Breslovers, for example. Okay, let's pray. Father, thank you for the blessing of allowing us the freedom to read your word, to study it, and to be a community. We thank you for your blessings, and thank you for all your blessings. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.